Greetings, Craddock here. Going to be going over the Voracious speed. This is the Masquerade set, Masquerade of the Burning Carnival, the Bone Spears set. Now, one of the big things here is the Voracious rune itself, giving us extra resource cost reduction. Stacks up to 25 times, duration of 5 seconds. Now that duration is going to be very important for later, but for now, suffice it to say that this is a huge source of resource cost reduction, which is very important because we are wearing Captain Crimson's. Captain Crimson's is in this build, gives us damage reduction based on our resource cost reduction and based on our cooldown and extra multiplier, both of which are going to be super important for going up in Greater Rift levels a little bit, especially when you're doing these solo speeds. So it's a little bit finicky at times, keeping it up, but it works out quite nicely, I think. So something really cool here is that the resource cost reduction synergizes really well with your attack speed. You have super high attack speed in this build. We have Gogok for 15% here. We have the Crystallization rune for 30%, and that crystallization amount is actually added in with your weapon affix, 7% on the weapon. So it ends up being a little bit more than 30% after everything is said and done, but I think that's really cool, especially since the Scythe has a base attack speed of 1.3, not 1.4 like most other classes have. But anyway, it's still quite a nice breakpoint to be at when you're attacking. The basic idea behind the build is just spawning your simulacrums and chunking out spears, but it's a little wonky. You have to take it in rotation, and you have to keep an eye on your simulacrums. Now with the new patch, when you blood rush, they will teleport to you, so that's pretty cool. Whenever you're moving around, they will be right by your side, and they will hit your targets a little bit more readily. That's especially going to be important in this build because we're going to be using it as a ranged build, or even mostly a mid-range build, I would call it, in the very least, to get more of the Scythe's bonus. So the Scythe's multiplier, we're going to want to take advantage of that a little bit more. So we're going to be at range a little bit more. It means you can teleport to Oculus rings a little bit more readily, maybe target down elites quite nicely. We're also using Bane of the Trapped, which will proc from our Krysbin stuns, and also procs from, since we're using the Cold Rune, on all of our enemies at range, which is pretty cool. Pretty nifty synergy. So good. Okay, let's recycle back to durations. The difficulty here with Devour is it only has a 5-second duration. So as you're moving through the rift, we have the Molting Rune on Blood Rush. This is so we can always keep up our Devour. So if I'm auto-casting Devour, you'll see it is refreshed and it will stack up continually as I Blood Rush. Because I'm consuming the corpse, it's about 3/4 of a second to a second after you Blood Rush. So you have to keep in mind to Blood Rush at least once every 4 seconds or so to keep up the stacks and keep up that damage reduction, right? Otherwise you might die. And you might run out of essence too. So it really falls flat if you don't get that up. Speaking of, when you enter the rift, you won't have this bonus, so it might be a little bit more difficult to survive and to collect stacks. I would recommend targeting trash. So if there's an elite at the beginning of the rift, just skip it and then come back to it if need be. You want to kill the trash to get the stacks up first, and then you can sort of engage. It's similar to how Veer Archon plays in this regard. We have a lot of on-proc effects here. We have the stun effect from the Xayah Stone of Vengeance, 20% chance to stun the enemy for 1 second. We have the Frostburns in the queue, giving us a little bit of extra cold element, maybe 1 GR's worth. And then we also have 50% chance to freeze enemies here. And then we have the Bone Prison passive, giving us a 30% chance to trap enemies. And it actually stuns them for 3 seconds. So we have a lot of on-proc stuns, which means when your spears are piercing across long hallways, across the level, they travel quite far, as you can see here. When they hit enemies, they will automatically proc your Krysbin, and you will get extra damage as you're moving through the rift on incidental trash. So speaking of Krysbin procs, we have Bone Armor Dislocation. It's quite a wide radius here to let you zone enemies that are, so if you can use it offensively by stunning and then teleporting away, or you could use it defensively to kind of keep enemies at bay while you attack a target that's at range. Both great styles of play, but just know it's going to be part of your rotation here because we have a short duration on Gogok. You're going to want to be hitting enemies. You're also going to want to be casting your Bone Armor to proc that, or keep it up rather, and then you're also going to want to be teleporting with your Blood Rush quite often so that you're consuming corpses to keep up your Voracious. So it's sort of, you might Blood Rush, attack a few times, cast your Bone Armor, and then move on. It's sort of the flow of the build. Now, another on-demand stun that we have is the Freezing Grasp command skeleton. It's going to be very important for targeting down elites, especially yellows. They're very susceptible to this attack, and since we don't have NG arm or anything that requires us to kill the whole pack, we can just target the yellow, blow them up, move on, right? It's really cool. If you run into blue packs, they are still helpful. Usually if it's like a 3-pack or lower, I will target them down individually with the command skeleton Freezing Grasp. But if it's larger than 3, I'll try to line up the blues to get like multiple piercing hits on the enemies. Usually it's just a better tactic. Shielding elites, just target the ones that aren't shielded with command skeletons, kill them quicker, and then kill the rest of the elite pack. That's also a great use of this spell. I really just like the utility because if there are a lot of enemies that shoot projectiles, you can just command your skeletons and they will soak up those projectiles as well. It's kind of cool. It's a really fun spell to use, but also does complicate the gameplay a little bit. So it just adds that next level of enhancing the run, right? Alright, so speed. We also have a lot of movement speed in this build, fueled by death, giving us 30% when we consume our corpses, and then lost time. Since we have a lot of cold spills, the command skeletons, we have the bone spear, they're all going to keep this 50% movement speed up. And I feel like it flows quite nicely with this amount of movement speed. One thing to note here with the multiplier, Maltorious' Petrified Spike. Credit to Wujijo on this. The multiplier, it's actually an additive, so it adds in with your damage increase, your skill damage basically, that on gear that says bone spear damage, adds in with this 700%. It's really weird, and I don't know why it's like this, but that's how it is. So having these affixes is not as advantageous as I originally thought. You really want vitality on the helmet, and you want armor on the boots, or all resistance, really, is the kind of boot you would want here. But I don't have that yet, so I still have the bone spear damage. Obviously on the phylactery, you don't want that either. So just noted. And yeah, it's a really fun build, really powerful with the convention of elements, only on a 3-element cycle. It's just all around very smooth, very powerful, highly recommended. If you want some extra vitality, I would recommend at least 800k. So whatever it takes to get up to that amount. You can run topazes, you can run amethysts, you can also run emeralds or rubies if you want for the extra armor and gear. It's all up to your preference, right? And yeah, the Haunted Visions works very well here. It's just synergy, a lot of good synergy with this build. Everything has a purpose, everything has a place. And yeah, you're going to get clears of about 2.5 to 4 minutes with this build. Slightly longer clears, but you can go vastly higher than the other speed build I put together that uses Brig's Wrath. That build is just super quick, like 1.5, 3 minutes to 3 minute speeds. This one you could push higher with because of the extra multiplier and the extra toughness, but it's a little bit harder to play and manage. I think it strikes a good balance if you are willing to put in the extra effort during your speed farming session. You get the extra reward, right? So anyways, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll be producing more Necromancer content, and yeah, thank you.